Hi everyone, my name is William Krenzer. I'm a research project manager over at Duke University, and in this video I'm going to go ahead and talk about comparing registered reports to some other similar research practices that you may already be participating in your research today. First, let's go into some of what our learning outcomes are. So first, we're going to go ahead and define what these other research mechanisms are and some of the features that are similar to registered reports. And in doing so, we're going to look at some of the differences and similarities between these research practices and registered reports, and you can see how they are not very different than what you may already be doing. So the first one we're going to talk about today is pre-registration. And pre-registration is registering what your hypothesis and or your analysis plan are prior to collecting any data. So what you're doing is you're creating a timestamp of saying, this is what I plan on doing, or this is what my hypothesis is, and I'm going to go now conduct my study. Now this is very similar to what we see with registered reports, right? We know within a registered report, after you get your in-principle acceptance, most journals require you to go ahead and pre-register your hypothesis on these sites. And so we can say that these two are intertwined, right? Registered reports need pre-registration to make sure that they are valid and they are having these kind of hypotheses are registered. Now, there are some differences between the two, and this kind of goes with this intertwinedness, right? Registered reports and pre-registration have a one-way connection, right? Registered reports need pre-registrations in order to go forward, right? You need to pre-register your hypothesis prior to data collection. However, pre-registration functions without registered reports. You can do a pre-registration without doing a registered report. It does not need that. So there is this one-way connection that registered reports need pre-registrations, but pre-registrations do not need registered reports. Another key difference that we do see between these two mechanisms, it comes in the peer review, right? We know with registered reports, your study design and your analysis plan are peer reviewed. However, with pre-registrations, they are not. You are just posting your plans online and that's it. There is no review of what you say you are going to do. So there is no checking to make sure that your design and your analysis are correct. Where with registered reports, you're submitting it for peer review, and it is going to be checked to see for the best kind of outcome for your design. For our next mechanism that we have that's similar, we're going to look at registries. Now, registries is a general term, and this tends to be within the clinical field. So we can think of this registries as something like clinicaltrials.gov. What registries are is a source in which a researcher will, again, register what their hypothesis is and share their results with the general public. So it's a resource in which clinical researchers can go ahead and share these kind of information. Now, we can see that this is very similar to a pre-registration and registered reports and registries in that you are stating what your hypothesis is prior to any data collection. And so we can see that kind of similarities there. Now, there is a big key difference between registered reports and registries, and that is publication, right? We know with a registered report, after you get your in-principle acceptance, you're guaranteed a publication as long as you follow through with what you said you're going to do. However, with a registry, when you're going on and publishing what your registry for your results, that is not a publication. That is just a data source in which you're saying what you're planning on doing and you're sharing your results with the general public. It does not get you a publication. And so there is this difference between those two there. The next one that we can think of between similar mechanisms is going to be a protocol paper. Now, a protocol paper is a publication, but it's a publication of your research design and analysis plan. So you are getting it peer reviewed and you are submitting it to a journal, and it is getting published as its own manuscript. So we can think of this in terms of a similarities with registered reports, is that it's very much like the stage 1 peer review. You are getting a peer reviewed product prior to collecting any data. So with registered reports, you're getting a peer review prior to collecting any data, and protocol papers, you're getting a peer review and a publication prior to collecting any data. Now, there are some differences though, right? With registered reports, you're getting a publication regardless of what your outcome is, right? So once you get that in-principle acceptance, the journal says that we will publish your full manuscript once you are done, regardless of what comes out of it. Now, with protocol papers, that is not the case. You have to go through a second peer review process, right? So you have to go through and resubmit a new paper based off of your results. And so they're not connected in there. The other difference that we can see here is that with registered reports, most journals try to keep the same peer reviewers throughout the whole life cycle of the process. And so you should have the same peer reviewers for stage 1 submission and stage 2 submission, stage 1 peer review and the stage 2 peer review. Now with protocol papers, that is not the case. So you do not keep the same peer reviewers from your protocol paper to your actual manuscript submission. So there is that difference there that you may not have this continuity between reviews that you receive. The last mechanism that we want to draw these similarities with is going to be grant proposals, right? Now, a grant proposal is you writing out a detailed description of what you plan on doing research-wise. You're going to state your research questions, how you're going to answer it, and how you're going to analyze it, and the impacts of those questions and how they may affect other research questions you have. This is very similar to a registered report in terms of your stage 1 submission. You're writing out your entire research plan, how you're going to do your analysis, and what you plan that could affect your other research questions that you have in this paper. So we can see that your entire research project is being written out, and that's very similar between our registered report and our grant proposal. But there are some key differences. The first one being that with a registered report, you are getting a publication. You are getting a guarantee that they will publish your paper. While with a grant proposal, there is no journal, there is no academic journal associated with it, and so you're not getting guaranteed publication from getting your grant proposal accepted. Now on the other side, we can see that with a registered report, you don't have any funding guarantee just because you get that in principle acceptance, right? So you have no guarantee that you're going to have funding to conduct that study. While on the opposite end, grant proposals is essentially asking someone for money so that you're proposing research to get money, and so you have a funding opportunity there, but you don't get a guaranteed publication. And so we can see how these connections between these two would be very helpful if you had a way of getting funding and a guaranteed publication. Now that's what we can kind of work towards. Now, in this summary of this video, right, we talked about pre-registrations, we talked about registries, we talked about protocol papers and grant proposals, all these very different ways that people are conducting research in our current atmosphere, and how registered reports is similar and different to each one of these. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and keep checking out the rest in this series. Thank you.